What's up, guys? My name is Joe Hatago with Authentic African. And if you want to know why I'm happy I moved to America from Africa, then this is the video for you. All right. We are live. We're live. We had some technical difficulties. So, if you guys can hear me, there's been a lot going on where it looks like it is not so great. So, if you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up and let me know where you're watching from. If you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up and let me know where you're watching from. There's a lot going on right now with my technology. My laptop is going through it right now. But if you guys can hear me, let me know by giving me a thumbs up. And of course, let me know where you're watching from. All right. So we got Mr. London Boy for Life. Says you can hear me watching from London. What's going on, Mr. London Boy for Life? You can hear me watching from London as usual. Appreciate it. Cool. And what about on IG? Can you guys hear me on IG? Let me know if you guys can hear me on IG. So the topic of today's live is why I'm happy I moved to America from Africa. And is America better? Is America better? That's the question I need to answer for you all. Okay, so we got Daughter of Marie is in Memphis for now. Shout out to Daughter of Marie. Roz, hello, I'm watching from the United States. What part of the United States? Anne Marie Harding said you're watching from London. We got the UK in the building. So yeah, I got to share the live with some folks that I know that'll be watching from other parts of the United States. There was a lot of questions as to how I feel that I've made this move, why I'm happy that I made the move so far, and what it looks like. So, we'll give another minute or so for people to join. But in the meantime, again, let me know where you guys are watching from, and I would love to be able to shout you out and see where you guys are watching from. So let me know. I was alerted today that many of the people watching are watching from they're zero generation Africans who've moved to the continent of North America, moved to the United States. So many of you watching, I hear, are baby boomers. So I appreciate all of the people who watch. So yeah, let's see what some people are saying. Momodou Benjamin Bagora from Sierra Leone, Freetown. Benji, what's up, Benji? Long time no see, Benji. I don't know if you know, say I don't left Salono. I don't can US. I don't transfer can US. I don't follow Sylvia for can US. Benji is somebody I know for a long time. I think since 2017. He was a driver for an NGO in Sierra Leone, and so he's driven me many times around Sierra Leone. Mr. London Boy for Life says, "I'll say America is better now, but one day Africa will be better than the West if we change our mindset and put away the corruption." Interesting. Roz Chanel says, "I am the American trying to leave the U.S." I get it. Daughter Marie says, "I recently got the opportunity to move to the continent later this year. Congrats. Definitely have some advice for you." Roz Chanel says, "I'll be in Birmingham, UK this summer. Would love to connect with people to meet." We'll definitely do that. Benji says, "Okay, that's fine. He knows that I moved." So yeah, is America better? Why am I happy that I moved? For a lot of reasons, I'm happy that I moved. But let's start with just the basics. But before we do, some other people. Shout out to Black 130. Hey, watching from McLean, Virginia. Nice. So, I am someone who really gets joy in bringing people together. And one of the challenges that I had, whether I was in Ghana or I was in Sierra Leone. In Ghana, I was building a network. I was getting to know people, but I didn't have events at my house. Very rarely did I bring people over and bring people together. So I missed being able to do that. In Sierra Leone, I never had my own place until more recently. And still the space was small, so I couldn't really bring people together. And so that for me was a big challenge, right? Being able to bring folks together from different walks of life. And because the networks that I had built in those two countries were more recent, from 2017 to present day. And with Ghana, it was really only from 2020 to 2020, 2023. And but being here in New York City, where I am currently, I have a substantial network. Even if half the people I expect to be somewhere show up, there's still quite a substantial amount of people that show up. So, for example, I had my welcome back party / birthday party this past weekend, and a really good group of people showed up. Lots of networking, lots of really good discussions and conversations. And just overall, it was an amazing time to see all these people that I haven't seen in such a long time. And I think one of the things that you take for granted is when you live in the same city as some of your longest friends, those people you've known for the longest amount of time, you don't see them that often, and you're just like, oh, I'll see them next weekend or the next birthday party. But when you spend 4 years living in Los Angeles, like I did, and only saw that group of friends twice a year whenever I'd come to New York and throw an event, or move to the continent of Africa for another 4.5 years, and then the year in between that is the pandemic, I've seen many of these folks once in the last 4 years. Some folks I saw once in the last 6 years. Sometimes I saw those folks on the continent, maybe some of them in Sierra Leone, maybe some of them in Ghana, others of which I saw when I came to New York in 2022. But my point is, I really took for granted those friendships and how much energy I got from bringing all my friends together or bringing groups of friends together. And so that was a really good experience for me. And that was something that reminded me that um, it, no matter where I live on the planet, it's going to be important for me to continue to nurture the relationships with the friends that I have. And one thing I'll tell you folks, any of you who are planning to move anywhere off the continent, is to remember your friends, remember your people, you know, um, because just these things you just take for granted, you'll begin to miss them once you leave and go to the continent. Trust me, as someone who did it, it's something that I definitely noticed. So iTuber12 says, is America better? Yes, nearly all metrics. This cannot be argued. The only thing going for Africa is being in political power. As of now, the continent has not used that power to make Africa modern. Interesting point. I would say I think it depends on what you're measuring, right? He's, as he said, nearly all metrics. So, to the topic, right? Because the topic of the discussion is America better, right? And here's what I would say, in terms of a couple of different key elements. One, ease of movement um, around the country is a lot easier in many countries in Africa because many of them are smaller than the United States of America. In many cases, if you encounter the police, it's an encounter that generally is a one where you can walk away from it with your dignity on the continent of Africa, right? So, like in my experience, right, I've gotten into arguments with police in Nigeria. No, sorry, not in Nigeria. I met police in Nigeria, but no arguments there. But in Ghana and in Sierra Leone, and I didn't fear for my life when I got into those arguments. We had spirited discussions, you'll say, but there was no fear. There was no fear for my life. As I mentioned to you all before, I've had guns drawn on me in the United States twice, it's 2 times, and I've been stopped and frisked by the NYPD as well. And so my experience with police in the United States as a law-abiding citizen, by the way, has not been the best. And so, that is an element that I think is important to acknowledge, right? Every country and system has its positive and its negatives. But in this particular instance, I would say, dealing with police, in West Africa, in my experience, well, let me say, specifically in Ghana and in Sierra Leone, was a lot better of an experience than it was for me dealing with, let's say, the NYPD. Never had any experiences with the LAPD too much, but you see many experiences where it doesn't go well. And so for me, I would say my experiences there have been different. But even though I'm having technological challenges right now, in general, my internet connectivity is a little bit better. You know, running water is better. I have certain things that are just in America. There are things that we live in terms of having at them as expectations, and there are certain parts of Africa where you have to spend some money to ensure that that becomes an expectation, and you can live out that expectation there. So for me, in order to have running water, I need to drill a hole in the ground, pump it into in Sierra Leone, drill a hole in the ground, pump it into tanks. From those tanks, have that water go into the house, and I have to ensure that that's a constant flow, right? Which also is going to cost somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 and $7,000, right? So those are some of the requirements necessary in order for me to have the water that I'd like. I also have to buy a hot water heater, either a large one or multiple small ones, to heat up that water, right? So whereas most of the places where you are in most of major cities in the United States, right, you have access in major cities, because there are some cities like Flint, Michigan, where the water is not clean, or some people are mentioning other rural Alabama and Memphis, and other places where maybe there may be some other challenges, infrastructural challenges. But in general, in America, in the major cities, these are things that are just part of your everyday life. In the continent of Africa, these things are modular. So you're going to have to buy a hot water heater. You're going to have to figure out a way to get access to water that you can utilize for your house. And so these are things that make it a little bit more challenging to live there. So, but I think those who come to the continent of Africa with cash, with money, tend to have a better time there. And so that's one of the things that I give everyone as advice, is if you have a constant, steady flow of income, either in the country that you're in, and it's something that's going to live in perpetuity, or you can bring in that steady flow of income that lives in perpetuity from outside of the country you're moving to. Those things are going to allow you to be able to live with some of the creature comforts you might be used to living in the West. Now, I'm not a person who generally complains about basic inconveniences. Not having hot water was something I could just deal with, because I could heat up hot water on the stove and do a bucket bath. I didn't need to have hot water coming out of the shower or out of the faucets. Cold water is water was cold. The water was cold. It is what it is. But if you want those conveniences, then you're gonna have to pay for it. Those things it's just a part of everyday life. And so same thing with the electricity, right? I mean, of course, being here right now, we've had blackouts before. There was a blackout, but when there's a blackout in a major city like New York City, it's generally like international news. There was a blackout, I think, in 2004. And I remember being in Harlem when that blackout happened, and it was like pandemonium. We're running to the store to get flashlights, things that people in Sierra Leone already have on deck, flashlights, chargers, all kinds of other things. We lost our minds. We didn't know what to do. And I think that that's also an interesting thing. If there was something to happen, right? The grid goes down in America for 30 days. I guarantee you 90% of the United States would not know what to do, even if it lasted for 5 days. Having now lived in Sierra Leone, I can now live with no electricity for extended periods of time. I've now learned to live that way. So, I mean, obviously, ideally, that never happens here in the States, but it could. And so there's kind of that silver lining of the lessons you learn, and the ability to adapt that is going to be required. Um, so let me see. Yeah, and one of the things that is said, and this is something I meant to say too, is when I'm in Africa, I'm more relaxed. Things are a little bit slower. I can stop and smell the roses, as they say. I'm not always constantly and moving. The rat race living in the United States is real. The cost of groceries is crazy. I mean, next level. I spent $73 on fruits and vegetables, bread, sorry, fruits, bread, some granola, fruits, bread, granola, and two vegan, like a vegan sandwich and a vegan burrito. That's $73 that I spent last Saturday, not the Saturday just passed, but the Saturday before, and that lasted me for like 4 or 5 days. And so now I had to go shopping again, right? And I had to go get more food again. In Sierra Leone, for the week, I would spend, let's see, 8 divided by 23.5. Let's see, 800 divided by 23.5. I would spend $34 per week on my groceries. And then the other piece to it is somebody was actually making like cutting up my fruit for me, and I had access to help to make those things easier for me in my everyday life. So right now I have to put aside some time to go make a smoothie, right? To go cut up the fruit, put it in the smoothie, make the smoothie, drink it, right? Whereas when I was in Ghana, when I was in Sierra Leone, I had house help to do that. When it comes time to do laundry, I can go to the laundromat and go stay in there for 3 hours and put in the washer machine and put it in the dryer, or I could drop it off and pay them and pick it up. But it's way more expensive to do that than to when I was in Sierra Leone and having someone, do my laundry for me for what is equivalent to about $8. And sometimes in the US it can cost you like $8 a pound to do your laundry in the US sometimes. So, of course, most people will say, yeah, America is better in every metric, but I think it's what you're measuring, right? I mean, if you're measuring quality of life for the cost of living, I think you have to take that into consideration, right? What I found a lot in West Africa was folks who were kind of like middle class, but hadn't ever really washed their own dishes because they've always had house help, right? And even like raising their own kids, they've always had people around to help. Whereas in the United States, you pay an exorbitant amount of money to have someone else do those things, right? And so those things are always going to be important to call out. So better is always subjective, as P. Rowe Dusha says. Um, so Raj Chanel says, I would love to be a part of your network and participate in how you bring people together. Well, Raj, let's definitely shoot me an email. My email is at the bottom of the screen here. So you can shoot me an email and we can definitely talk. Or you could send me a DM on Instagram, authentic_African. Mr. London Boy for Life says, not everybody is meant to move to Africa. In my opinion, the best option is to live between Africa and your original place of residence in the West. Mr. London Boy for Life hit something. This is a point that I think is really interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who earlier this year left Sierra Leone and moved back to the States. And in that discussion, they mentioned that is their goal, is to live half the year in the West and half the year in West Africa. And I had a conversation with another person, a prominent personality in Sierra Leone, somebody who's had a big media platform. That person also said the same thing. In fact, they're not stepping foot in Sierra Leone all of this year, but they'll be back and forth from Ghana and the States. But they made that exact same statement. For them, they thought the best thing to do over an extended period of time is to live between these two places. And the reason for that is this. Those of us who have had any level of financial success in the United States, depending on what industry you're in, will determine whether or not that skill set will transfer to West Africa and you'll be able to generate the same kind of financial success. In many cases, you won't, right? And so you'll have to find new avenues, which means you have to become a student, learn all over again, and you're going to have to invest in those things. And you're going to have to invest in the learning, and that's going to take some time. So for many people, it makes sense for them to take 6, 10, 15, 20 years to decide to before they fully move and transition to living on the continent. I made the decision to move to the continent in 6 months. It was about July, and I was like, all right, I'm moving. And I hadn't really thought through what that might look like. And that's why I've been giving this advice. And I've been talking about this over the last few weeks, but I've given advice now saying, look, you need to make sure you have a plan in place. And we talked about this before, so I'm not going to belabor these points. Many of you have seen those lives. I've done them previously. So if you want to know more about that, just check my previous lives. I did a Don't Move to Africa live. And if you want to know exactly what you should do before you decide to move to Africa, watch that live and you'll get all the details there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to think about this. You know, I have family members who are like have like kind of like a 15-year plan, and they're slowly but surely transitioning away from the States to West Africa. But one of the things that I'll definitely mention, and this is something that people don't like to talk about because there's all kinds of conspiracy theorists and all kinds of other things. But when it comes to your medical conditions, whatever they might be, your physical health, you know, it is going to be important to have a primary care physician everywhere you are, right? And have them be able to share that information with other primary care physicians. You want to have a baseline for where you are health wise, and you want to track that over time. But for me in particular, it's important for me to have someone in Ghana who I utilized. I'm still working on getting someone in Sierra Leone, and definitely having someone in New York and in LA and in America. And because I had to go to a hematologist back in 2016 before I had knee surgery, and the hematologist I went to was one of the best in the world. And so that person happened to be in Los Angeles. The orthopedic surgeon that I had also happened to be one of the best in the world. That person was based in Beverly Hills. And so, and even the dentist that I had was one of the best in America, at least. And they were based in Beverly Hills as well. And so, you know, yeah, okay, fine. You know, you can get medical treatment anywhere, but I'm always the type of person that says, if you're going to get medical treatment, you want to go to the best. And those people tend to reside outside of the continent of Africa because a lot of the best on the continent of Africa tend to leave. The good news is many of them leave to go get some education, work, and then come back. And so you're finding some really, really, really good, amazing doctors on the continent of Africa. So I don't want to discredit those who are there who are doing excellent work. I'm just saying in terms of, you know, if we're talking about the many options for great doctors, the options are there, and specialists, many different types of specialists, many kinds of machines, tests that can be run. Talking about countries where, specifically Sierra Leone, where some of these tests that they might need to be able to run, or diagnosing you after a test is done, may be more difficult to do there, right? And so, you know, what I found is that friends of mine, their parents who live on the continent of Africa, come to the U.S. once or maybe even twice a year to do their yearly or biannual checkups with their primary care physician or whatever other specialist that they have to see. And so that's just the nature of how it works and what happens. Many of my friends as well, who were living on the continent of Africa when they got pregnant, gave birth in the United States, and then moved back. I have a good friend of mine now who I guess her husband, acquaintance. I guess her husband is an American citizen, but they were able to have the baby in the U.S. Right, and so well, actually, I guess she's an American citizen, or she has a green card or something. But she was able to have her baby in the U.S. And so, you know, when people have the choice, they opt to go to the US or maybe even the UK or maybe Canada or wherever else, somewhere in the West to get it done. And then those who don't have a choice to go all the way to the West, many people in Sierra Leone, they choose the option of going to Nigeria or Sierra Leone, or Ghana. For instance, the former president of Sierra Leone, now there's some speculation as to why, but he went to Nigeria for medical treatment, right? So it does happen that people tend to leave that country to go get treatment, right? Sierra Leone in particular. They mentioned that, different political appointees, when they're going to get treatment for anything, they go outside of the country. And so those are just things to keep in mind, right? For those of you who are planning to make the move to the continent, you want to be able to freely move back and forth and have the income to do so. So Mr. London Boy for Life says, in my opinion, Africa needs to forget about democracy and go to a monarchy. That's interesting. I think the problem with that is absolute power corrupts absolutely. And anyone who's ever been a dictator or in charge for longer than 10 years, almost always it's regretted by those who have lived under their rule. And then the other thing you have to think about is this. When you have a democracy, if you have a really, really bad, like a nefarious, just terrible leader, and they, believe in the peaceful transfer of power, at least they're out of office 10 years or 5 years. Once you have a dictator or a monarchy and you have a ruler that's just a, POS, you got to deal with that person until they die. And, just because they're POS doesn't mean they may not live to be 95 years old. And so you also have to take that in consideration, right? If you want one ruler of a country for their entire life, you better hope it's a benevolent dictator, someone who has a country at heart. And that's almost never the case, right? And so I understand why this argument is made. And I had this conversation with a good friend of mine. We had this conversation and we looked at Rwanda as an example. And we said, look at what Kagame's done. He's been there for 20 years. And then, due to some reporting that I've seen, and you guys might have seen us cover this on the stream that I do with This Week in Africa with African Stream, we found that, there's some evidence that, what's been going on in the Congo has been perpetuated by leadership in Rwanda. And so, someone who we looked at as like, this is the perfect example of a benevolent dictator, maybe not so much. Right. So I hear you on that, but I'm also not sure. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm skeptical of that. America is better in terms of healthcare and, of course, amenities such as electricity, water, etc. I think Black 130, you kind of just encapsulated everything I said. So, yeah, well put. But, yeah, I mean, and at least in terms of the metrics that people are looking for. Yeah, so I think people do agree with that. It would take Africa a long time to be great again and to fix its issues. I believe Africa, that was Mr. London for Life. Black 130 says, I believe Africa is more relaxed and kind of slow. We mentioned that before. Daughter of Marie says, I grew up in Mississippi, educated in Alabama, and now live in Memphis. So I feel your pain, and it saddens me that you had those experiences anywhere at home. So yeah, I mean, look, I think for me, I have no problem, as some people call it, thugging it out, but like, grinding or dealing with some of the minor inconveniences. No issue for me. They call it first world problems. I'm not that person. But I do want to solve those challenges because I do want more people to come back and more people to move eventually and to visit and to travel and to invest. And right, if that's my goal in the end, then I need to ensure that for those who are planning to do that, they have a soft landing and a smooth transition, because not everybody is cut out to live that way for any period longer than 24 hours. And so my goal is to try my best to ensure that if I recommend people move, that I ensure that their experience is a pleasant one. Sorry, my aunt's calling me, and I just was at her house yesterday, so I have to message her and let her know that I'm live right now. But she's been great. You guys can still hear me, right? Are there any sound issues? Just let me know. Um, Shiraz one says true. You agree with me? Nice. So yeah, so let's get back to some of the differences, right? So we talked about some of the things that were mentioned: water, electricity, healthcare. Um, you know, okay, here we go. People have been living there long term, though. The continent is not empty. Okay, I guess that's in response to me saying more people coming back. I guess is what you're saying. Yeah. Yes. Correct. I think two things can be true though. People can have been living on the continent for a long time, and it could still be beneficial to have more people come back. So appreciate the comment, but I don't think I don't think one negates the other, right? I think when I'm talking about people coming back, I mean more people, and what I mean by that is this: yes, there have been diaspora moving to the continent since the inception of what we're considering countries on the continent um, right now. You know, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me just mention to my aunt that I'm live. Um, so sorry about that. I had to just mention it to her because I think she keeps calling. So I just wanted to make mention to her that I'm still live and that hopefully hopefully there's nothing going on that because she called twice in a row. Um, so yes, just to get back on my train of thought there. Uh, so yeah, I mean, why do I want more people to come back, right? And why do we want to make sure that it's more comfortable? And I'm talking specifically about countries that I spend most of my time in. There are other countries like South Africa, right? Jamaican on the move is asking, have I been to South Africa? I have not. So I use Africa in the title because I want to try to get as many people on the live as possible so we can share this information. Specifically speaking about West Africa and specifically speaking about my experience in two countries and my friends' experiences who live around the continent, right? People who've moved to other parts of the continent, but my specific personal experiences and those who I encounter and the things that I see online. Um, so, I try to give the good, the bad, and the ugly, talk about solutions here on these lives, ensure that people know what they can do to ensure that, again, they have a smooth transition, they enjoy their time, and then they stay longer. So, so me, myself, for instance, had I had a channel like this where I was following on YouTube before I moved, I may have put other things in place before I moved to the continent. I moved in December basically on a whim. But with this kind of information, I may have visited and may have come back and forth throughout 2021. I may not have just said, you know what, let me just move full time and let's just do it. Um, so what I realized is if I did not do that, or if had I done that, or had I had someone telling me what to expect, I think that my decision making process would have been a lot different, right? And so, I do think it's important to have these kinds of conversations and to talk about it, right? We have to be real, right? Like just the reality of things. As much as we all want to fantasize about how great, um, living on the continent is, and it has its many benefits, there are elements to it that aren't so great, right? Just like everyone. Sorry, I hear somebody screaming outside. It's just New York noise. But just like in the United States, some people see the U.S. as the place that they want to go. They don't always have the best experience coming to the United States, right? I just talked about the groceries and how expensive they are. I think it really impacts some people when they make that move. Um, So there's a question here. Black 130 says, "Do you feel disappointed that Africa did not meet your expectations? What can SL do to improve their livelihood?" So, do I feel disappointed that Africa did not meet my expectations? It's a good question. I don't think Africa did not meet my expectations. I didn't come with any expectations. So, and honestly, I arrived within 2 months. I had a job and I had a network that I was building, and I had friends in 2 countries, and so I was actually lucky enough to have that. And then also a friend of mine who I've known for a really long time was like, "You need to start a YouTube channel," and so I started the YouTube channel. And so, I wouldn't say that Africa didn't meet my expectations. I would just say that I did not properly prepare to ensure that my experience on the continent of Africa was one that would have been permanent, right? Because it could have been permanent had I had no responsibilities and I wasn't in the process of building a house or building on land and things of that nature, right? There would have more of a likelihood that it would have been a much smoother process, and I would have stayed. So I didn't do what I needed to do to ensure that it was a permanent stay. And so that now with the knowledge that I have, I'm armed with new knowledge coming back to the West. I can now work on ensuring the next time I move back to the continent of Africa, it is a permanent stay. And I'm ensuring that with each subsequent trip, I am continuing to build on the last 3.5 years, right? Whereas I was going before and it was like going there with no plan of action, except for one trip, I went there with a plan of action of getting a bank account, starting a business or opening a business, getting a TIN number and all that, and getting my citizenship. I only went one time with a real focus, and buying land too. I don't know if I mentioned that. Every other trip though was just like I'm just going and let's just go with the flow. And so now, having lived there, I can go with intent, meet with specific people, whether it's in the government, people in private sector, people at NGOs. I have a business that I had started in Sierra Leone. I can continue to pitch people in person, right? I have purpose when I go, and I can continue to build on that. I can go get updates on the house building project because the house is underway. These are all things that I can go do, and I can now go with purpose, having had the experience of living there 3.5 years. Now, Black 130. The second part of your question is, what can Sierra Leone do to improve people's livelihoods? We've talked about it, right? The infrastructural challenges, but I don't think it's going to have to be Sierra Leone doing it. I think it's going to have to be people doing it for themselves. Because at the end of the day, all of the major structures were not built for the population that is there today. And the population is only going to grow, it's continuing to explode. And so, if you're expecting that you're going to move to the continent, specific areas of the continent, and that the government is going to make changes that will make it more comfortable for you, those are going to be a lot longer of a process. And so, you have to do it for yourself. You're going to have to make sure you have backup power supply, right? You're going to have your own generator, especially in Nigeria and in Sierra Leone, Ghana as well. You're going to have to make sure you have your own access to water supply in Sierra Leone in particular. You're going to have, your own water well or whatever it might look like, a borehole or a water well, to ensure that you have access to water. You are going to have to do the work to make sure that, your lifestyle is, improved and you have a livelihood that you're used to and that you expect. And again, in terms of income, you're going to want to have other sources of income that you can pour into a potential new source of income, whether that's buying and building and then renting out a property, or renting an apartment and then utilizing it for Airbnb, or if you're starting some kind of manufacturing business or water business. I've seen all kinds of businesses, people starting solar companies, transportation businesses. Your initial startup capital will be great, but you're going to need to have additional capital to be able to infuse into that business, to be able to protect against all kinds of different things. Right now, there's a fuel shortage in Sierra Leone, for example. Nigeria's had fuel shortages before. Ghana's also had it happen before. So when you have these fuel shortages, what are you going to do for backup fuel, right? If you don't have light, you're running on a generator, the generator uses fuel, then you're going to need to have fuel for that generator. If you get solar, that may be the best option, right? It's going to cost you a little bit more, but it's also going to sustain you a little bit longer. And it'll ensure that you don't have to deal with the fuel cost issues, right? So again, if you plan appropriately, before making the move by listening to the lives that we do here. Or if you go and you live for about a month and kind of get a real feel of what it's like to live on the ground, not in a hotel where everything is already set up for you. You got AC in every room. You have automatic switchover, so they go right to a generator or right to solar to ensure you don't have a long power outage. Water is already, they have their own water reservoir and all of that. You won't really know what it's like to live there. And that was my challenge, right? Between 2017 and 2020, I had been going to Sierra Leone often. And every time I would go, actually all the way to 2022, I would, except for 2 months, I would always stay in hotels. And so my experience there was that was all taken care of for me. Then when I moved into my own place, where those things had to be put into place twice, I learned what that's like to live without those things, and it took some time to get acclimated and adjusted to that. So I don't think it's up to the country to improve the livelihoods. It's up to us as individuals to improve our own circumstances when we travel to the continent. Specifically, again, Sierra Leone and Ghana, and even for some Nigeria. So Raj Chanel says, I'm following on IG, but don't see how to DM you. What's your email again? You should be able to DM me. But anyway, my email is just authenticafricanlife@gmail.com, or you can email Authentic African Media Group, Authentic African MG@gmail.com. Liz Z says, welcome home. Appreciate it. This is one of my homes. Jamaican on the Move says, you are correct. Go where you are treated best. Mr. London Boy for Life, do you think West Africa is more developed than East Africa and South Africa, or North Africa? What's your conclusion? So no, I would not say West Africa is more developed. So here's what I would say. Each region has its country that is doing the best. But Egypt, in some places, is rather highly developed in terms of Cairo in particular, and New Cairo. I went to that place. The billboards per capita in New Cairo, by the way, is next level. I've never seen that many billboards anywhere. They have billboards everywhere. But when I was in New Cairo, I would say, they some places there were really, really well developed. Obviously, Kenya in East Africa, Tanzania, Zanzibar. It's Zanzibar and Tanzania, in Tanzania. I hear good things. Some places in Rwanda, they say. So that's East Africa. Then in Southern Africa, you have South Africa. I hear good things there too. And in North Africa, and some people say good things about Casablanca and in Morocco, or some places in Tunisia are good. So I think West Africa has Nigeria, which is the for a while was the had the highest GDP. But in terms of infrastructure, I think East Africa and in terms of the East African bloc, in areas of Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, I think if you include those couple of countries where they have generally pretty good infrastructure in their capital cities, in terms of the different blocks of the continent, East Africa is probably the most developed. North Africa is probably right there with them because they have some countries there, as I mentioned, Morocco and Egypt and North Africa. Some people say parts of Algeria are doing pretty well as well. And then in Southern Africa, it's mostly just South Africa, but Zimbabwe's down there. And I hear good things about Zimbabwe as well. But I think East Africa is probably the best, most developed. I won't say the best, but the most developed based on what I know dealing with people when I've worked at a company that had offices in those countries, and then people who I know who are from there and who've experienced really, really advanced infrastructure in many of those places. D is saying spot on. We just need to be more open and collaborative and supporting, as well as distilling entrepreneurial solutions, because the opportunities, talent, and quality of life back in Africa is better. 100%. There's so much opportunity. When some people pose a challenge, other people see that as an opportunity, right? And that's just what it is. There's this story about a sneaker salesman, and he goes to a country in Africa and he sees that all of the children are wearing slippers or no shoes. And he's like, "Damn, people don't even wear shoes here. Why would I sell shoes here? People don't wear shoes." So obviously, that sneaker salesman saw it as a challenge. Well, and I'm kind of butchering it a little bit, but you guys get the idea. The second sneaker salesman came and said, "Wow, nobody wears shoes. That means it's an open market. There's opportunity to sell shoes to everyone or to get shoes to everyone, right?" And so there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it as a challenge, or you can look at it as an opportunity, right? And the continent of Africa, with its many challenges, also pose many opportunities. And it's up to you to determine where you fit in and how you want to take part. Mark Hansen says, "What do you think of making it a vacation home in Sierra Leone and only visit during the winter months in the U.S.?" Um, um, yeah, I think for me, I would probably visit a lot more than that. But for some people, I think it makes sense, right? If you prefer to live elsewhere, but you just kind of want a vacation somewhere, that makes sense. For me, my goal is not to live in the United States full time for longer than the next 4 to 5 years, right? My goal is going to be to move back to West Africa full time or the continent of Africa full time and be able to go back and forth. And so, and over the next years, my plan is to kind of go to the continent once every quarter. Jamaica on the Move said, "I finally moved from New York to South Africa. I have solar, so the electricity issue doesn't affect me that much. I moved from New York. I traveled extensively in America as a travel nurse." So Jamaican on the Move has seen what it's like to live all around and travel around the United States, and now lives in South Africa as a travel nurse. Well, after having been a travel nurse, and has solar. So that was the right move. So set it up so that they did not have to deal with the challenges that come along with not having electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mr. London Boy for Life says the African youth need to realize that the people in power are not going to improve their quality of life, and they need to find a way around the system, which is challenging, but I know it's possible. Yes, easier said than done, but yeah, I think anywhere in the world, I don't think you should rely on the government to save you. I think that's the problem for most people who are indigenous or consider themselves indigenous. If you've been in a country for more than 3 generations, you start to consider yourself indigenous to that country, right? You consider yourself of that, ethnic group or that particular cultural background, right? And what I find all around the world is people who are native to those countries complaining about the government. What I always find is that the immigrants to those countries never complain about the government or rarely complain about the government because they're coming there dealing with their own challenges with their own governments back home, and they're coming to that country looking for opportunity and finding ways to make it happen and not waiting for the government to give them something. And so this applies everywhere in the world, including the United States. I mean, the United States is not excluded from this discussion. I think people in the U.S. all the time complain about the government, how the government doesn't do this. There's no government programs for that. And I will say there are certain things that I would recommend the United States do, like socialized healthcare. I think they should require their politicians to go to public school. Require the politicians' children to go to public schools, and they require politicians' children to go to public hospitals. I think if that happened, they would greatly improve the state of the public hospitals and the public education system around the United States. That's an idea that I have that I put out there. So anybody who's in the world of making legislation happen, maybe make that recommendation to some of your people that you know. iTuber12 says South Africa is a great country for Black people for sure. If you save your coins and you can buy in the secure areas, great infrastructure there. Congrats, Jamaican on the move. There you go. Congrats. My 10-year-old daughter is attending school in South Africa. She was born in Tanzania. There you go. iTuber says Southern region and Northern region are the most developed. East Africa is up and coming, though, and will overtake both these regions in our lifetime. West Africa is nearly dead last. Central is last. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. That is iTuber's experience. D says the Lebanese and Indian communities have established a long-standing entrepreneurial presence in Africa over countless generations, and now Chinese. That is very true. Indian, especially in East Africa, Chinese all over the continent of Africa, Lebanese, especially in West Africa, from what I've seen and what I've learned. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just, obviously, if they've been able to do it, then those of us who are, of the continent, and closer to being more recently removed from the continent, however that has happened. I think, yeah, you're right on, D, and I think that's just important for us to realize. Mark Hansen says you like the idea for politicians in the U.S. And by the way, this is my idea for politicians all around the world, right? I mean, it's interesting to me that politicians all around the world, because I think that would be the best way to make politicians make any improvements in any country. The reason why I tell people not to focus on the government is because there aren't very many incentives for them to make any immediate changes, right? And so that's why I say that you need to focus on yourself and try to figure out a way for you to be able to develop the things that you need for yourself and your family. If you wait for a government, it'll just never happen. But if he instituted something where government officials felt the same pain of the average person who voted them into office, the constituency that voted them into office, if they felt some of those same pain points, they would make different adjustments. The idea of a civil servant is a civil servant. You were supposed to have another job and then come and serve your community. Now, you get paid $250,000, I think, minimum in the United States in terms of those folks that are in the House and in the Senate. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's $250K. You guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but $250,000 is far above what most people make in the United States. Some people might think that's not a lot of money, but most people make the median income in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, is $37,000 a year. If I'm not mistaken, it's in that range. Let's say it's 50,000. Let's just round way up and say it's 50,000. The median income in the United States. Let's say it's 50,000. The average person in Congress makes $250,000. Why is that important? Well, they make that, and they have healthcare that covers a quite substantial healthcare that covers most of their family's needs in a way that most people do not get access to. And so they can send their kids to amazing private schools that have a lot of funding, and they don't. And so the same public school system that they're saying that they want to fix, whether they're on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle, if they don't feel the pain of it, they're not really going to make sure that it gets fixed this term, right? Imagine if their kids had to go to those schools. Within 2 months of all the freshman senators and freshman Congress people, they would be writing up laws and bills. They'd get voted on. They'd pass both chambers of Congress. President would sign it into law. It'd be immediate. This would happen within a month if they had to send their kids to the public hospitals and public schools. And I'm sure you guys agree with that, right? And I think if any country did that, I mean, that's kind of off on a tangent, but that's just one of the ideas I have for politicians. D is saying African capitalist mindset's the only way. I think when you're thinking about like other people who come to the continent of Africa and they come with capitalistic and mindset and they come to build businesses, you can do well. You can do good and do well. This is the thing that I'll leave it on is, you can do good and do well on the continent of Africa. And I implore all of you to think about that. So what do I mean by do good and do well? You can do good for people, right? Meaning you can employ people, right? And you can do well financially as well. And so, but it's going to take people who actually have a connection to the people. And that's generally folks like us who are on this live. If you've decided to sit through hours and hours previously and almost an hour today, right? You obviously care about what's happening on the continent, right? This kind of stuff matters to you. So you have, these things in your mind, right? So if you want to do well financially, but you also want to do good. The people who aren't watching this, who don't watch this kind of content, who move to the continent and do the things that you saw that I posted on Instagram today, where they were beating those African workers, those folks are just trying to do well for themselves. They don't want to do good for the people. And so that I think should be the goal for all of us when we're talking about visiting or moving to the continent or investing on the continent, is ensuring that we do both. Of course, capitalism rules the day. It is what it is. I know some people want socialism. I know some people want communism, but it's capitalism. And so if we're in a capitalist society, then you need to know how to operate within a capitalist society, and you need to operate with no illusions that it's changing anytime soon, because it won't. Um, so anyway, yeah, I think that's just the point I wanted to make on that. Um, Mr. London Boy for Life says, I just want Africans to be better because it has so much potential, or Africa to be better too, because there's so much. It does have a ton of potential. Yes. Um, yeah. So last thing that I'll just say is this: if you guys want to move to the continent of Africa, by at all, if anybody's thinking about moving to the continent of Africa, and you want to talk to me about, if you want to talk to me directly, have a one-on-one discussion with me about what it would be like to move, um, and what, like, what it takes, right? You can email me and we can set up a consultation. So let me just set up a new banner, just so yeah. So let me set up a new ticker. Hold on, is it up? Something weird just happened. That ticker is looking funny. Let's hide it. Let's do it again. Very strange. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, now let's try it again. Still doing it. Anyway, AuthenticAfricanLife@gmail.com. So if you want to set up a consultation with me, you plan on moving to the continent of Africa, you want to set up a consultation with me, it's AuthenticAfricanLife@gmail.com. It's down there on the bottom of the screen. If you want to plan travel, you can also reach me there, and I'll send you a link to where you can sign up for some travel, and you can figure out where you want to go, what you want to do. I partner with Maximum Impact, an amazing travel to the continent of Africa. You not only get a chance to visit and see what it's like to do like the cool stuff, but you also learn a lot about the history of those countries that you visit. Separately from that, there's Traverse Culture, who also is a great company too. They're doing a lot in Kenya right now, and so I definitely recommend taking a look at what they do. And I'll share all that with you. If you decide you want to visit or move, or if you want any advice, you can set up a call with me. So some people are saying happy birthday. And so I think the first person to say happy birthday was Roz. So Roz, thank you. My birthday was on May 1st. I was live with Sierra Leoneans Killing It the day my birthday was, but I appreciate it. Jerry Campbell saying belated happy birthday. Appreciate it. Mr. London Boy for Life is saying happy belated birthday. Appreciate that. Thank you. Jerry Campbell says, yep, we're in a sea of capitalism, nothing else at this stage, at least, and it's going to move us forward as a group. Yes, that is the world we live in. Okay, so with that, also too, if anybody has any questions on how to build a social media platform for your brand, your business, I can do consultative calls for that as well. So you can email me and I can send you a link to set up the consultation. Or you can just look in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, in the description, you'll find it. Those of you who are watching on X, you'll just have to click on my profile, the link in my profile. Then you'll be able to get over to the links there. D saying, can I treat you to a belated birthday dinner in Brooklyn, Manhattan? You free this week? Yeah, D, we haven't caught up in forever. This is somebody I met. D, where did we meet? 2014, 2013, maybe? No, it was before then. Probably 2011, 2012. So, but yes, let's definitely catch up. I am here. I would appreciate that. Let's for sure let's do dinner. I think you sent me a message. I have to reply back to you. So I'll reply back to you. Let's set that up. Mr. London Boy for Life says, when's the best time to visit Sierra Leone and it's not too hot? Not too hot. Okay, so the best time to visit is definitely not between the months of May and September because that's like the rainy season. So anything outside of those months are going to be better. Right before or right after is when it's coolest, but at the end of the day, it's going to be hot. So you just got to be prepared for it to be hot. Daughter Marie says we're almost twins. When's your birthday, daughter Marie? And were you born in 1984? Jerry Campbell says Incas. Looking forward to meeting you in Salon in November, Joe. We'll connect in Brooklyn. Okay. I think there might have been some typos there. But yeah, definitely looking forward to meeting in person. Andrew Conte says, hello, Joe. I would like to know about running an Airbnb in Congo Town. Is it a good location? It could be. Yeah. I think what you need to do, let's set up a one-on-one consultation. You see the email here at the bottom, set up the consultation, or just look in the description. In the description, it'll say, planning on moving to the continent, set up a consultation with me. Just click on that link, set up a consultation with me, and we'll talk through what makes the most sense. Oh, okay. Jerry was saying I was looking forward to meeting you in Sierra Leone in November, but we'll connect in Brooklyn. Yeah, I don't think I'll be in Sierra Leone in November this year. I'll probably be there in December for sure. Andrew says, been watching your videos for a while now and you have a wealth of knowledge. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm glad, and I appreciate you watching too. I'm glad that you've found it useful and helpful. So I appreciate that. Double A Vibe says, I'll contact you and happy birthday, bro. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Daughter of Marie says, May 3rd, Gen X. Okay, so you're the generation right before me. Technically, I'm a millennial. I'm 3 years into the millennial, so I'm a millennial. But you're Gen X. Okay. So yeah, we're almost birthday twins. May 3rd. I have a good friend whose birthday is May 3rd. And Andrew says you'll get back to me. All right, cool. So we've now reached an hour, and we've covered all our bases for today. So if you guys found this video interesting, make sure you hit that thumbs up. If you watched it this far, first of all, thank you for watching all the way through. Thank you to all of you who have been engaging in the conversation. I completely neglected to check out the folks that were on Instagram, but shout out to all of you who joined on Instagram at some point in time or another. I see Sasha over there. I see Sean over there. Who else joined on IG? The Sound of Accra joined. Okay, so I appreciate you guys all joining. But those of you who are interested and found this interesting, sorry, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and make sure you share this with anyone who you know is thinking about making a move to the continent of Africa, who's talked to you about it, who's not sure, doesn't know what to think about, or doesn't know how to think about it, what decisions to make, what things they need to take into consideration, all of that kind of stuff. Send them to videos like this, and they can also set up a consultation with me as well. If you know any brands that are looking to get some advice, some consultation on how to grow their brand on social media, I can help with that as well. As you can see, we've grown. Oh, we just hit 300,000 followers on Instagram today. So thank you to all of you who helped us get there. We were stuck at 299 for almost a week. So we got to 300,000 and we're just beginning. There's so much more to do. We're a little over 14,700 on YouTube. We're trying to get to 20,000 before the end of this year. And we're looking to get to new milestones across all platforms. But where we've gotten so far, I can show other people how to get there. And so I'm looking forward to helping folks if they need that. So all of that information is in the description. So if you know anybody who's looking to get any help, you can send the links in the description or you can share this video with them. If you haven't already, subscribe to the platform on YouTube, Authentic African, and follow us on Instagram if you haven't done that as well. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you all on the next video.